of an age that I know what happens if you can't do this legally. So, it was like a no-brainer for me.
I remember what illegal abortions are like. They're not good. I'd rather have women have a choice.
Some of the sound of voters in Ohio. Welcome back to America Decides. Access to abortion care is on the ballot in Ohio tonight and remains on the minds of voters nationwide. A new CBS News poll out today finds 74% of Americans are concerned pregnant women may be more at risk in areas where abortion is mostly illegal. 60% are concerned maternity care centers and hospitals could close. With that in mind, Nancy Cortez and Molly Ball join us now. Nancy, of course, CBS News chief White House correspondent. Molly, a newly minted senior political correspondent at the Wall Street Journal, a longtime chronicler of all things political in this country. Good to see both of you. This abortion measure tonight, Nancy, not only a very big deal in Ohio, but being watched so closely by Democrats, by pro-abortion, anti-abortion advocates across the country, because if it happens in Ohio, such a big battleground state in the past, the thinking is it could be quite effective for either side of the argument going forward into next year.
Right. We know that abortion was an animating issue last year, right? We saw special elections. We saw a variety of measures either aimed at expanding abortion access or restricting it. All of those went the Democrats' way and the way of people who want more abortion access. So the question tonight is, does that continue to be the case in Ohio? Because if it does, that is a sign that it could be an animating force next year as well in the general election. That's what obviously the Biden White House is hoping, because there isn't anything else that has been as motivating for Democrats to vote. And the president's poll numbers, as we've recently seen, are soft. In Ohio, in particular, what they're voting on is a constitutional amendment that would basically protect abortion access. Doesn't mean that eventually the state couldn't restrict access to abortion after the point of fetal viability. We're talking about 21, 22 weeks potentially, but that's a lot different than the bill that the Republican governor of Ohio, signed a few years ago that would cap it at 6 weeks.
And it's also very different than what's going on in Virginia, where you have the Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, leaning into this issue and being far more specific than many of his Republican colleagues across the country about when he thinks abortion should be permitted and why, and talking about it quite openly in a handful of these legislative races across the state.
That's right. I mean, I think it's important to remember what a rapidly shifting landscape this is. It's only been a year and a half since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and so both parties have been grappling with that and struggling to find messages that resonate and positions that voters are comfortable with, particularly swing voters. And of course, especially Republicans, right, who have been on the wrong end of, even in red states like Kansas and Kentucky, but they've been on the wrong end of this issue. There is a school of thought, and it is the Glenn Youngkin school of thought, that Republicans should not avoid this issue. That when you avoid it, it just allows Democrats to depict Republicans of wanting to ban all abortions. He's saying, I'm for a 15-week limit. I'm going to argue that that is a moderate position. And it is the case that 90+% of abortions occur before the 15 weeks. The polling on this is very slippery depending on how you ask the question, but they have polling that suggests a majority of voters may view this as a moderate position. And so he's trying to say, I'm going to tell people where I stand, I'm going to be clear about this, and maybe I can sell it. Now, depending on how it turns out tonight, it may be the opposite. It may be that voters look at that clarity and say, well, actually, we're against it, no matter how clearly you articulate it. Virginia is a bluish state. It has gone for Democrats in the last 4 presidential elections, went for President Biden by 10 points. And I think there's a lot of skepticism about whether the electorate, whether particularly suburbanites and swing voters, will go for any kind of further limitation on abortion than what's already in place.
I think the fact that Youngkin has been so adamant that his proposal is a limit, using that word limit and not a ban, is a sign of the way that abortion politics and the lingo are really changing as both parties try to own this issue. Republicans realize that the term ban is not popular. Right. Who wants to be banned from doing something that they were able to do before? And so limit is a more palatable term. On the Democratic side, you often hear advocates using the term reproductive freedom or abortion access because they realize that there are people out there who might not personally be interested in protecting abortion rights, but they might be open to it for someone they know and love.
And while Democrats writ large are watching both of these states for signs, the irony is that the two biggest statewide races, Kentucky and Mississippi, have Democrats who support abortion restrictions on top of the ballot. Andy Beshear has said he is in favor of restrictions, except with the exceptions of rape, incest, life of the mother. And then Brandon Presley down in Mississippi calls himself a pro-life Democrat from the womb to the end of life, suggesting that it's not only about, and this is the interesting argument, not only about restricting abortion, but getting better access to health care so you can live your life, which I thought was a creative way of talking about this. But you're not going to necessarily be able to glean as much from those two states, given that the Democrats are supportive.
Although if you look at the new CBS News poll that just came out today, what it shows is that even people in these very red states are concerned about medical care going away, are concerned about women's health, are concerned about the fact that it's getting more dangerous potentially to have a baby in this country. It's really striking that that is the majority of Americans, even in red states like the two that you're describing.
And Kentucky, of course, one of those states where a referendum that would have more or less banned abortion was rejected by voters last year. There is a ban in place that Beshear does not support, and he has campaigned. You're right. He is another politician trying to fashion a moderate lane on this issue, but he has definitely defined himself as the more pro-abortion rights candidate in this race, and he definitely has sought to use that as an issue against his Republican opponents.
In fact, there's an incredible ad he ran that put the Republican Daniel Cameron back on his heels because it had a woman who had been raped by her stepfather who said, "Would you really want me to have to carry that baby to term having that happen?" And that forced Cameron to have to tweak his position, which is kind of exactly what Democrats are hoping to see happen to Republicans across the country. Anything else you guys are watching tonight, quickly while we have you?
Medicaid. I think that's another big animating issue in Mississippi alongside abortion is that, again, another issue where even folks in red states are saying we'd like access to these federal dollars to expand Medicaid. And the Republican governor there has held the line. We'll see whether that hurts him tonight.
And I'll be watching Glenn Youngkin. He is someone who, as Costa has reported, is very personally popular, and a lot of Republican donors really like him and would like to see him have a future on the national stage. But he's taken a big gamble by putting himself in the middle of all of these races, trying to pull these Republican candidates over the line. We'll see if it's a favorable political environment for him. But he, as the Democratic leader of the caucus in the House of Delegates told me, that he thinks he's cracked the code, but he's going to get his head cracked. So if that happens, it could tarnish the pristine Glenn Youngkin political brand.
We shall see. That is arguably the most intriguing political storyline to watch tonight. Nancy Cortez and Molly Ball, thank you for being here.